Bengals free agency right around the corner, and no one knows the team better than Geoff Hobson. We'll talk with Butch today about what to expect from the Bengals in 2022.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. Today, we're joined by Bengals.com, Geoff Hobson. Thanks for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Available and free everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, get us delivered to your eyes and ears first thing every day. On your way to work, while you sit down at work, wherever it is, we're there for you 5 days a week. And Geoff, free agency right around the corner. Everyone is getting ready, putting their salary cap hats on, trying to figure out what this team's going to do in free agency, who they're going to keep, what external guys they might like to bring in. And last year when we talked to you, I think we disagreed with you, but you said, "Oh, they're going to go heavy on defense." And as I told you down at the Super Bowl on Radio Row, turns out you were right. Let's just start there. What's your initial feeling about what this team's going to do in free agency this year?
They're going to go defense. No, I don't. I guess I think they're going to obviously take trying to upgrade the offensive line, but I also think that what's different this year than in the last 2 years, when they've basically blown all their free agency money records out of the water. What's different now is they've already got a big piece of the pie is already spoken for in Jesse Bates, and they've got internal guys that they want to sign. I think the only in the last 2 years, I think what they tagged AJ, and that was it for keeping their own guys. So I think they'd like to split the baby there. I think they'd like to sign some offensive linemen, but also, they'd love to keep both Ogunjobi and Hill, but that's going to be a big question. Can they keep both on the defensive line? And obviously they'd like to keep Uzomah. So, I think what we'd all love was if we could find that, do what they did last year when they signed Awuzie and Hilton, 2 for the price of 1. They let Jackson go, who signed for $14 million in Washington, and they got Hilton and Awuzie for that combined. That'd be great if they could get a center or a guard for that. I mean, that'd be right down their alley. But clearly, I think where last year was a lot of it was defense, I think there's going to be a split between offensive line imports and defensive line mainstays.
Let's talk a little bit about one mainstay, close to a mainstay, I guess. Trey Hopkins, you'd call him that, and two Treys, Trey Waynes, Trey Hopkins, two different sides of the spectrum. Feels like Trey Waynes is gone, and it rightfully so. You save almost $11 million if you make that move. Right. What about the other Trey? Do you think Trey Hopkins makes it past cut down days, so to speak? Do you think they keep him? Not that there isn't necessarily a cut down day, but do you think they keep him in that $6 million or so that they could save against the cap? Or do they apply that towards a Ryan Jensen or one of these other interior linemen that there's rumors and reports about that the Bengals are interested in?
I would think the least they would do would be try to renegotiate. And if not, maybe it's just a plug and play. Maybe it's what you said when they sign a veteran center. Maybe they release Trey. I don't know. I know they would like to keep Trey in some form because the guy's so smart. He's the glue of that. He's the glue of that line. And you need a guy like that. You need your center to be your nerve center. But you also, obviously they're trying to get better in there. So, but I think they'd like to keep him in some form. But so there could be a couple scenarios. Maybe you renegotiate, or maybe you just plug. You sign somebody else and plug him into his salary slot.
And we've got rumors. It's rumor season, of course, Geoff. And Jeff Hathorn, a different Jeff, who happens to be the sports director of 93.7 The Fan, which is in Pittsburgh, I believe. He's a Steelers insider. And through Andrew Filipponi, he apparently said today that you can put the Ryan Jensen rumor to bed. 95% he ends up in Cincinnati. And you've also got Adam Jones, who may or may not know the inner workings of the Bengals free agency plans, saying that Ryan Jensen is a future Bengal. So you've got a couple of sources that aren't necessarily very connected to Cincinnati. And at the peak of agents leaking things to make their guys more money, saying Ryan Jensen will be a Bengal, would that surprise you? I know we just talked about him potentially taking some of Trey Hopkins' cap allocation as a replacement, but what's your feeling on that name in particular, or maybe Bradley Bozeman?
Yeah, I mean, Jensen wouldn't surprise me. They're clearly trying to upgrade. What would surprise me is the age. I think they're trying to get younger. I think the model is, if you look at last year, all those guys they signed on defense, nobody was over 27. So Jensen turns 31 on May 27th. So that's the only thing that would make me pause. But he's obviously, actually, I think at the Super Bowl, Trey talked about how much Jensen tape he watched when they were trying to figure out how to block Donald. He said he was really, he learned a lot from watching Jensen, which would be kind of ironic if Jensen replaces him. But, Jensen's, an estimable player, and he's highly regarded. So I think they would like to get a guy younger than Trey. I think Jensen's older than Trey, so that would be my only thought. But no, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me that those guys had it right. I mean, they're obviously talking to somebody, and everybody's talking. Everybody's talking to somebody. So it'll be. I always get nervous when they say, "Well, it's 95%." That always. But I'm sure at some point. If I'm writing a Ryan Jensen story here in the next 96 hours, it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's the thing with the offensive line to me, Geoff, is there's no big fish. Like the Bengals viewed Trey Hendrickson as oh man, if we could get him, he's going to bolster our pass rush. They viewed DJ Reader as, this guy that you could just plug in and be this dominant player. I don't think they're going to go that route necessarily offensive line wise. And it might be the cornerback route, like you mentioned, where it's these middle of the road guys where age might be a factor. And part of it is there is no 26-year-old entering his prime, second year contract guy that really stands out where you're saying, we can reset the market with this guy the same way we did with DJ Reader at nose tackle. We can commit 4 years, $60 million to Trey Hendrickson because we think he's going to be that damn good and he's entering his prime, And so to me, they may have to almost compromise and say, okay, age-wise, we're not going to love it, but we need to protect Joe and we need this running game to be better and all of those things. So we'll go middle of the road guys versus Armstead, right? Teron Armstead from the Saints, who has an injury history and is on the wrong side of 30 as well.
Yeah, I just don't know if their resources are like what they were. They got a lot of resources. They got more room than most teams, but they've also got, like I said, they've got guys they want to sign here, and there's the specter of Burrow staring at them. Not this year, obviously, but next year he's eligible for an extension, and that turns your cap on its head. So I think they have to start. They have to start looking at that. I think. And that's why I don't. You're right, James. I don't see that big ticket item out there for a number of reasons.
I think things obviously get a little bit less flexible when Joe Burrow's extension comes due. We've talked about it with Andre yesterday. He's going to command a lot of money, and the Bengals will have to figure out how they're going to pay that money out and manage the cap hits. And if it's anything like they've done in the past, the Bengals will be like many other teams that have to maneuver around a quarterback contract. And I want to get back to this offseason a little bit more because you talked about it, Geoff. I think the Bengals do have a little bit of money. So we'll talk a little bit more about what the external free agent plan and the internal free agent plan is going to look like for the Bengals this year coming up next.
It's that time of the year. The college basketball tournament is finally upon us, and you can get all of the latest odds, contests, player props, and so much more in one spot. BetOnline, the number one source for all of your sports betting needs and information. BetOnline is the best spot for all the scores and news this season. And no, it's not just basketball. As Xavier tries to make their way into the NCAA tournament, the University of Cincinnati, well, the odds a bit longer, but they still have a shot if they can win the American Athletic Conference tournament. And you can wager on all of that and more at BetOnline, your continued source for all of your sports wagering and information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Go there now, BetOnline, or use your mobile device to sign up today. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, guys. So let's get back into this upcoming offseason. Geoff, you mentioned, of course, BJ Hill, Larry Ogunjobi as guys that the Bengals would like to have back along with CJ Uzomah. Is Jesse Bates, do you get the feeling, looking at the Bengals history and what usually happens when the Bengals franchise a player, is Jesse Bates going to play on the franchise tag in 2022 if I put your feet to the fire today?
I mean, he'll play. Yeah, I mean.
Oh, sorry. I mean, well, yeah, he'll play.
Will
I'm
he
not saying
sign a
he's
deal?
going to
Will he
sit out.
sign a deal? Will he sign a long-term deal before July 15th?
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a shot. I mean, I do. I think Bates only because I think Bates likes it here, and I think he'd like to stay, and he's close to his family. So I think I think I think there's a shot that still can get done. But the fact that they had to tag him obviously shows you that they get some room to go there. So, and I'm not, I think they like Bates. Obviously, clearly he was a huge factor last year just in the locker room, just getting these guys here into camp, here into the voluntary workouts. He's the player rep. He's always got deep ties in the locker room. But again, there's the specter of Burrow, and how much do you pay as safety as opposed to a corner, or as opposed to to the edge guys, to the people on the edge and the people making plays? But if you look at what he did in the postseason, the guy was clearly a playmaker. He made a play in every game, a big game in every a big play in every postseason game. So I do think there's a chance, just because I think Bates is. I think because both of them want to be here, and I think they'll work pretty hard to get it done. Whether it gets done, I don't know. That's anybody's guess.
Geoff, I asked you about Big Fish and Teron Armstead, and I guess Ryan Jensen would be considered that, but everybody's focused on the offensive line.
Right.
But when I think about Bates and him getting tagged, and the Bengals, and you said it, they love corners. It's no shock, no surprise. And DJ Reader 2 years ago, last year Trey Hendrickson. Is there any way? Is it anything's possible? So I guess I shouldn't phrase it that way.
No.
How realistic is it for the Bengals to look at things and say, we need another corner anyway? J.C. Jackson is 26 years old. The Bates negotiations with his agent, and these are my words, not yours, clearly not going in the direction we think that they should be going for us to get a long-term deal done. And if it continues that way, well, we can just tag him next year at a reasonable number with the cap going up anyways. So, we could keep him through his age 26 season. And then if he walks, he walks. If they could get a shot at that, at a guy like J.C. Jackson, and that be their big fish, instead of extending a guy like Bates, not necessarily that they couldn't do that down the line, but doing it this offseason, is that something they consider, or do you think they're going to go more mid-range cornerback? Because there was a rumor about J.C. Jackson and the Bengals, and I could see that. I mean, because they've done it the past couple of years, and from an age profile, from a position standpoint, all of those things that lines up. Is it realistic?
I don't think so, just because he'd blow it out of the water, right? I mean, he'd be more than Hendrickson, right? What was Hendrickson?
Yes.
4 years, 60. Jackson's going to be more than that, and then
probably 70 or more.
Yeah, and that takes and they didn't give Jesse 70. So, and I get he's a corner, but that would take you out of. It would take you out of Uzomah. It would take you probably out of both Ogunjobi and Hill, and so I mean, you still might be able to squeeze in a Jensen maybe, But I just think I think there'd be too much collateral damage for a signing like Jackson. That's why they could, that's why I was saying I don't think this year is quite like the last 2 years, because you've already got 13 million already is on Bates, and that kind of precludes a big bang there. I mean, you can still get several good. You can still get good players, but I don't. Something like Jackson, I think would take you out of. I think it would take you out of the whole thing.
Let me throw some numbers at you, Geoff. And I think I did this last time we talked to you last year. The Bengals currently, in terms of cash spending, not cap spending, but cash spending for 2022, have about $133 million committed. Now, let's go down the hypothetical road of the cut for Trey Waynes and the potential cut for Trey Hopkins. And then you also have to include money, of course, for rookies and for, Morgan Stanley, if they give him a restricted
Stanley
free.
Morgan.
Gosh, dang it.
You always do that.
Stanley Morgan.
Talking about money.
What's
That's
that?
right.
Especially when you're talking about money.
Yeah,
I can see why you did that.
That's what it is. He's got a 2.4 million tender coming at least, and that's cash spending plus all the exclusive rights guys. I come to a number that's about 128 million after those potential cap cuts in cash spending for 2022. And looking historically, I would expect the Bengals to spend around $210 million in cash commitments in this 2022 league year. That means the Bengals have about $80 million in cash, year one cash to spend this year. And I know a lot of that's going to go to internal guys, but when you think about it that way, do you think that we might see some bigger signing bonuses, maybe because the last couple of years they've done $20 million? Do you think we'll see another $20 million signing bonus like they did for, not $20 million year one spends on Reeder and Hendrickson and Trey Waynes? Do you think there's going to be a guy like that this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll get one of those, I think, but I don't know how many you get because, the draft picks are $8 million.
And I've accounted for the draft picks in that number, so I've got the draft picks included.
The restricteds are about 5.5. The practice squad's $3 million. I think that number. I don't think that number is. I think the number is smaller than you say, but I get what you're saying. But I do think they can't afford one big cash, cash layout. And really, all these deals that they'll do, they'll all be big in the first year because that's what they do. They'll be bigged up. That'll be where the big percentage is in year one because of just what you said. They've got room. That's why they never push anything into the future. So, but like I say, I don't know. I'm not sure they have that much cash. They've got a lot of cash, but I don't think they have the same amount of cash that they had last year. The last 2
Jeff, if they go that route and there is one big cash spend, if you had to make an educated guess on the position that they use it on right now, what position would that be?
Wouldn't it be Ogunjobi at defensive tackle?
You think Ogunjobi is going to be that big of a splash?
Well,
you could be. You could be right.
He'll be a splash. I don't know. It's probably not what you're talking about, but he'll be a large splash. He'll be enough of a splash that I don't know how many. I don't know if you can get the biggest splash.
Well, but let me ask you.
About. I'm not.
Let me ask you this then. Ogunjobi Hill. Do you think in a perfect world you keep both of them? Is it Ogunjobi the priority of the two?
I would just because of the kind of year he had. In my mind, yes, but I don't. But they also like Hill a lot too. But they got to get one of them back. And I know that Ogunjobi had a hell of a year before he got hurt, and so did Hill. So, but they haven't had that. Ogunjobi's that pure 3 technique that they've been missing for so long, and he. But I do think that that's a question. Can you keep both and get 2 or 3 offensive linemen? I think you might have to make it as you got to make a call on one of those guys, because I just don't think you're not going to have a Hendrickson out there. I don't think you're going to have a Hendrickson or a Reader. At the positions that they need to upgrade. So that's why I don't think Jackson fits.
So is your feeling that the Bengals and Ogunjobi, you think are looking at a multi-year, take him through like maybe age 30, a 3-year deal or something like that? Because I was thinking maybe it was going to be another 1 year coming off the injury, but it sounds like you think they're pretty pleased with the way he played this year.
Oh yeah, I think they're very pleased with him, and I'm not privy to any medical reports, but I think they felt like it was going to be a pretty straightforward deal that he's going to be able to get back. I mean, I think they would like to sign that guy. I think they'd like to sign him up multi-years. They'd like to sign up BJ multi-years too. And I think that's what we're going to find out Monday, fellas, Monday and Tuesday, where the market is, and then they're going to adjust. It's like, 2 years ago, they were all in on linebackers. And then when the market started on linebackers, they didn't like the numbers. The numbers were a little high, and then that's when they pivoted and went to DJ, because they thought there was more value with DJ. They would rather spend the big money on that spot than getting 2 linebackers for the prices that they didn't like. So, what's going to be the pivot this year? What's going to be the pivot? Where's the market for Ogunjobi and Hill, and how do they respond, knowing that they need help on the line too? So it's a different scenario,
It is. And then you mentioned Uzomah a couple times, and it's funny because we were busy covering the Super Bowl and Super Bowl week and everything that comes with that, Jeff. And Rob Gronkowski just happens to say how he loves Joe Burrow's swag and will like to catch passes from Joe Burrow. Obviously, age is a factor, but the production that Gronk had last year was still there.
Yeah.
And the idea of Uzomah and Gronk is, that's great for everybody, right? But do you think that's something they even entertain, or is it just probably focused on keeping Uzomah, keeping the guy they know?
I mean, they'd love to have. I mean, I'm sure they'd love to have Gronk, but then again, how much you got to pay him?
Probably $10 million for a year.
I mean, I'd love to have Gronk.
I would just guess. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't. But then that takes you out of. Now you get the collateral damage again.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be great to have Gronk, and he'll get you clicks, but I mean, if you're looking for another guard, if you're looking for a couple of guards, I'm not sure that fits.
Are there any guys in that group of guards in free agency this year that you think are good fits for the Bengals based on your understanding of what they're looking for?
Well, just the age factor, like Connor Williams in Dallas, he kind of fits the profile. Lapp doesn't like him, because he's got a lot. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say that, but Lapp has observed that he's kind of penalty prone,
right?
So that's not good. But you're looking at I think Norwell. Norwell intrigues me. Andrew Norwell, just because he's from here,
30,
and he's already getting paid. He's already had his big deal. And Drew Rosenhaus has a good relationship with his agent has a good relationship with the Bengals. But I just think he's a little long in the tooth for them, but I think a guy like Connor Williams who fits in there. I think I just think the Tennessee center might be a little pricey.
Yep.
There, but which is maybe why Jensen's might be a little bit alluring. I'm not sure Jensen's going to cost as much as the Titans guy, Ben Jones. But like I say, I think they're looking for that. Williams and some other guys who fit that. I think Bozeman's a center, but he can play both. I think.
He's probably a center. He's probably
Yeah,
going to get paid to play center. I think
yeah,
what I'm hearing is that the interior offensive line, the agents for interior offensive linemen think their guys are going to get paid. The James Daniels, the Austin
yeah,
Corbett's of the world, the
yeah,
even Ted Karras's of the world think
yeah,
that they're probably going to get a million or two more than a lot of people are expecting. I've heard projections for James Daniels, who's very young, 24 years old, the
right.
Bears interior lineman, 12 million per year for
Yeah,
James Daniels. Austin
yeah,
Corbett, 10 million per year
yeah.
are the numbers that we're currently seeing projected for those guys. And the Bengals historically don't value guard that highly, but after what they just saw in the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
Geoff, do you think that that changes this year?
I think they know they have to upgrade there, but I don't think they're going to. I don't see them flying out early on guards. If James Daniels is going to get 12, I think they'll salute him. I'm not sure they were all that shot in the neck with him when he was coming out.
Right.
So, I think that and of course it's a big, I mean, when you've just come off a Super Bowl that was dominated by a three technique, you know, that's kind of been the theme really of the last 5 years, really, about how those three techniques have, destroyed games just as much as the edge guys, because the quarterback can't step up, he can't follow through. I mean, we lived that with Geno Atkins. I mean, Geno Atkins terrorized, quarterbacks. Look at the numbers. Look at the passer ratings of the guys who came into this building in 2012, 2013, and 2014. Brady, Rodgers, Flacco, Roethlisberger. Go back to Wilson in 2015. Not only was it the overall defense of Zimmer and Gunther, but it was also Geno Atkins was in their face. So they took down a lot of great quarterbacks in that run because of Geno and the pressure from inside. So, they've lived it. But I don't know that, their philosophy is I just don't I think they're going to be active in the guard market, but I just don't think they're going to I mean they didn't go out there and get Zeitler, and I'm not and looking at it, I'm not sure how much did Zeitler impact Baltimore, and so I think they're going to go cautious at guard. They're going to go guard, but I think they're going to be cautious.
Well, let's take the non-cautious approach for my next question. And this doesn't have to do with guard, but it impacts the entire line. Laramie Tunsil is going to probably get traded. It just feels like it. It feels like Houston's going to deal everybody. I don't know about Watson and when, but it just feels like he's going to get traded. Maybe Brandon Cooks gets traded. But Laramie Tunsil, 27 years old, left tackle, under contract for the next 2 years. I know Jason La Canfora on Wednesday reported that Houston might be willing to they've already paid out all of his bonus money, I believe, but take on some of his contract to move him. Is that a guy you could see the Bengals liking? Because there aren't many, because they're willing to pay tackle, but there just aren't many under 30 tackles available, and they're drafting 31st overall. That, to me, and I know it's hard for it to come together, but if there is a big splash to be made on the offensive line, that one might be it, Butch. What do you think?
Tunsil's supposed to make 19 this year?
I think it's 18, but yeah, in that range. Yeah, it's big.
I don't see it. Sure. No, I don't see it. At that number, I don't see it.
Gotcha.
17 and a half. Yeah. 17 and a half this year. But what if what number would it be acceptable? Like what if Houston eats 4 million?
They better start chewing, because that's a big number. That's a big number. You're gonna have to cut that. Yeah, I'm just not sure. That's a big number for the guy, and I'm not. He's a good player, but I don't. I mean, 18. 17 and a half, 13 and a half, 14. I'm not sure that's a fit.
It's a big cap number for sure. Let's close, James, unless you have anything you want to go to after this, with a couple of Bengals internal guys that we haven't talked about yet, that haven't necessarily garnered as much attention or as much discussion, because I think a lot of Bengals fans are looking externally for these positions. But Riley Reiff, Quentin Spain, Eli Apple, are these guys in the running to be back? Are these guys that the Bengals think that they can count on for quality snaps, or are they really looking for improvement at those spots?
Yeah, I think they're looking to upgrade in all those spots. They may come back to those guys, but it might be later. But my sense is that they're looking to, they're trying to upgrade there. I think at corner, they're probably looking in the draft. And I think that's something that they're going to, Reef in Spain. They love those guys, but the age thing, and I think they see how that first, second, third wave goes. But those are guys they could probably get back to at some point, I would think.
Last thing.
Go ahead, James.
Last thing for me, as far as external guys, because you mentioned Ogunjobi as the potential, for the cash spend this year.
Yeah.
The biggest splash position wise, if it's not going to be guard, and again, splash is relative because to this fan base, someone that helps Joe Burrow stay upright is a big splash. So when I say that, I'm not necessarily saying Brandon Scherf, but what position do you think that would be? Is it guard still, where it's guys that completely
I mean, if
transform
it's not internal, and this is the thing, you never get credit for signing your own guys, but that can be a splash too, but
Sure.
You never get credit for it. But how many times did they give $60 million deals to Michael Johnson, to Dunlap, to Geno, but it never got the legs that Hendrickson did, because that was a first day guy from another team. But it's still money. It's still a lot of money, But I think I think we're probably talking guard, and it might not be one guard, It might be a center and a guard, that you're taught. It's a package thing, when you add it up, maybe it does add up to Hendrickson or something. But everybody wants a splash number, but we all know what you guys have been watching the Bengals long enough. They're not into that. They talk about value. They're not into the big splashy numbers. They've often said how many Super Bowls are won in March. And I know people will say, well, I saw one get lost in February. But, but I think that, the league is littered with March winners. How many Marches have the Cleveland Browns won?
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying there. I think that my takeaway is we're probably at slightly different numbers for what we expect the Bengals to spend. I think they've spent more than expectations would have suggested the last couple of years as well. Even when you dive really deep into the numbers and really do analysis on trending, they've spent a little bit more. And so I'm looking for whether that will continue or not. And I'm talking more from a cash than cap perspective. But what I took away is looking for improvements over guys like Spain, Apple, and maybe Trey Hopkins, maybe Riley Reef, looking still for value, looking to retain some of their key guys. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens in terms of how they manage all of this stuff, because the way that it seems to be going is if they have their way in free agency, and you never do, plan never endures contact with the enemy, right? You never get exactly your way. But if they do, it sounds like they do want to look at defense in the first round for the first time under Zach Taylor. Geoff, really appreciate your time today, your insight. Of course, everybody knows you write for Bengals.com. You have great insight into the team. And while people might not always love the direction the team goes, at least you bring that insight into where the team's mentality may be. So we appreciate that.
I mean, I agree with you. I think they're going to spend. I think it's going to be a kind of a steady deal, though. I think it's going to probably go from March 16th, probably maybe, I think they're going to do it a little here, a little there. And when you look up, I think their hope is they would have upgraded in a lot of spots, but they did it with, they still spent some cash, but they spent it on a lot of guys.
And they have the opportunity to do just that this offseason. Next on Locked On Bengals, James and I get into our offseason plans, trying our best to play by realistic rules and keep to what we think is within the confines of what the Bengals may do in free agency. Until next time, Bengals fans, go find Geoff Hobson, Bengals.com. Hoo day, and have a good one.